All right, man. So in this video, we're gonna be talking about the most disrespected MVP in NBA history. Yes, sir. I'm gonna go ahead and talk about my man Steve Nash. At least in recent history. I mean, we can go to Moses Malone. We can go to other players like that who, I could say have definitely been disrespected throughout the annals of history. But yo, Steve Nash gets like no love. Like I was looking for some highlight videos of him to, throw in the vid. I couldn't find nothing from the NBA. I was like, golly, y'all some assholes, man. This is a back-to-back MVP, two-time. What are you talking about? So in a recent interview, right, this man Steve Nash stated, I never took it to the heights that the numbers validate in today's day and age, where I probably should have shot the ball 20 times a game. It probably would have made a lot more sense, end quote. So his coach, I do agree, I do agree. Because I think, because basically in light of all this Hall of Fame talk, because he recently got admitted to the Hall of Fame, class 2018, probably a lot of people don't realize when you get older, you look at a lot of things in hindsight and you realize what you probably should have done and what you shouldn't have done. And you get a greater understanding of everything as you get older. And I'm sure it's really clicking for him now. Like, damn, I really should have lit these motherfuckers up. I could have let it fly. Because he was a shooter, yo. Don't ever get it twisted. Steve Nash was a shooter. All right. So his coach, Mike D'Antoni, because that was his coach back in Phoenix during the mid 2000s. He stated, just coming down, playing pick and roll, and if they even gave him a hint of going under, just whap it, instead of looking for a better play. That's what he was trying to tell Steve. And people don't understand, man. Don Nelson, I believe Don Nelson also coached Steph Curry. Steph Curry. Don Nelson, he demanded that Nash bring up his shots from he was about shooting about 5 a game to he had to shoot about 10 minimum, or else Steve Nash was gonna get fined. He said he had to bring it to money because Steve Nash wasn't listening to him before that. He wanted to play the game too much like a purist, like a pure point guard. And basically right after that, right after he made that threat to Steve Nash, that if you don't do this, it's going to affect your money. In the 2000-2001 season, Dallas, they won like 53 games. Yeah, they won like 53 games, made the playoffs. I think he was averaging, I had to look this up. He was averaging like 11.3 field goals per game. Shit was crazy, man. Dude double his shots per game, and all of a sudden they make the playoffs. Boom. That simple. So this led to the question of how good Steve Nash could have been if he shot the ball more, right? And some people say, could he have been better, or would he just been shot jacking? I think he would have been better definitively. It wouldn't have been a question. Like, dude, my man was so fucking efficient. He had 4 50, 40, 90 seasons. He almost averaged 50, 40, 90 for his career. Like, he was so fucking close. So close. It wasn't even, it's not even funny. People understand, like, if I pull up his number, I'm going to pull up his numbers later on. You're going to realize just how good of a shooter he was. And just the fact that if he probably pulled up some more, man, he'd be posting Steph numbers, right? So my man was drafted in 96. He's part of the 96 draft class. Classic draft class. Classic. That's up there with the 84, the 03, classic draft class. And you know what? The 2011 draft class is a sleeper draft class too. That had Jimmy Butler, Klay Thompson, motherfucking Kawhi Leonard, Kyrie. That's a sleeper draft class as well. But to this day, my man Steve Nash holds the free throw record all time at 90.43%. That's above everybody. He's like, I looked it up. He's like, number 2 is Mark Price. Number 3 is Steph Curry. So they're like right there with him. But he's number 1. So we look at the Suns before Steve Nash got there. Them motherfuckers were 29 and 53. Right? Because we're going to skip his Dallas stuff because that's not really relevant to what we're going to talk about. That's his earlier days. That's his development days in early Phoenix and Dallas. So the Suns were 29 and 53 before Steve Nash got there. And after they got rid of Stephon Marbury, because they wanted to free up some cap space so they could sign Steve Nash during that offseason. They sent off Stephon Marbury and, Penny Hardaway to the Knicks, clearing up cap space. Dude, this man came in 2004 and 2005 and took the league by storm, my G. Oh my gosh. If you weren't around, you probably wouldn't believe it. This is what the 7 seconds or less offense was all about right here. his playing style. Mike D'Antoni put him in this system, and this is basically how he got his first MVP. Dude, they went from 29-53 to 62-20. The only other player I've known who's done that, like in recent memory, off the top of my head, is Larry Bird, who did that shit back in his rookie season. He took the Celtics from like 20-something and 60 to like, they basically reversed the numbers, man. Went from like 60-something to 20-something. This shit was ridiculous. Now, they lost to the Spurs that year in the Western Conference Finals. They lost 4-1. Excuse me, they lost 4-1. They might have lost to the Pistons if they did get to the finals, but they had the most, prolific offense that year. So I say they might have been able to slip by the Pistons. Might have, only because players like Sean Marion and Amar Stoudemire, they're a little tougher than people give them credit for. They probably wouldn't allow the Pistons to just bully ball them the whole game. The only thing is, I think that Chauncey Billups definitely would have brought some physicality to the game against Steve Nash, which might have given him some trouble. But moving on to the 05-06 season, they lost in the Western Conference Finals to the Mavericks this year, but they were the number 3 seed this year because Amari Stoudemire was injured for almost the entirety of the season. Joe Johnson left too, and this man Nash still led the league in assists per game while upping his scoring to 18.8. That's his career high. Like, dude, your second best player goes down. That's cool. All right, bet. We're going to go from number 1 seed to number 3 seed. Not a fucking problem. Not a problem. How many of your favorite players in the league can do that right now? Just take off their second best player off their squad. How good are they still? Okay, all right. I can't name many. Can you? I can't name many. 06, 07, they ended up losing to the Spurs in the semifinals. But this was very controversial and questionable. A lot of questionable suspensions were made during this series. I'd say, based off of watching this series, I watched it live back a while ago. Not game for game, but here and there when I was younger. And I watched the whole thing recently. And let me say this: the Spurs can thank Tim Donaghy for that championship right there, man. Because whoever faces the Cavs in the finals from the West is getting that chip. That's simple. And you know what? Tim Donaghy even came out later on and admitted in a book that his supervisor, Tommy Nunez, I should say, disliked the team owner, Bob Sarver, Robert Sarver, however you want to say it, of the Phoenix Suns, and also claimed that he enjoyed the lifestyle of San Antonio and that he wanted San Antonio Spurs to progress. He also admitted to the series being poorly officiated from the very start until its bitter end. The book is named Personal Foul. It was written in 2009. You guys can check that out if you want to. I'm not suggesting you buy it, but if you want to read it, go ahead. Pretty good stuff. Tim Donaghy basically just said right then and there, that series was fixed. That shit was fixed from the start. But nah, man, just going back to this, I definitely do think Steve Nash, just because of that series, we have public information stating that series was fixed. I usually don't like to give players passes. I don't like doing that at all. But we literally have a source right here, a ref from that series telling you we cheated. That series was heavily swayed. It was a close series, and it was heavily swayed towards the Spurs. I gotta give Steve Nash his ring, man. I gotta give him his ring. I can't hold him. I'm not saying he's like a 3-time, 4-time champion, but I'm not gonna hold him below Jay Kidd and Gary Payton, who won their rings later on when he led this squad and he was cheated. They publicly announced that they cheated. You know what I'm saying? Like, come on, dude. Then we can just look at his abilities, right? We look at Nash. This man was a pass-first version of Steph Curry. A 6'3", 6'4" guard. Got great shooting touch. They can go for 50, 40, 90 any given season, right? Both of them, Curry and Nash, have been seen as defensive liabilities. They put in effort, but they're just not lockdown defenders, and they can be taken advantage of by physical guards. But the main difference between Curry and Nash is that Curry is a shoot-first point guard, and Nash is a pass-first. Also, Nash would often overread if you ever watched him play, and he'd make the right play a little too often, where Curry would make risky reads way too often and reap the benefits or the consequences later. Kind of win big, lose big kind of situations with Curry. But I decided to do a little bit of, statistical searches and stuff like that. And let me say this, man. This dude, Steve Nash, for someone who's so damn small and, well, let's just keep it a buck. Nobody thought he was going to take over the NBA. And with his short run of brilliance, he was 22nd all-time effective field goal percentage. Top 10. I think he's a top 10 shooter and passer of all time. There's only a couple other people I put in that category, like Steph Curry, John Stockton, Larry Bird. I think Steph Curry, he might be like number 10 behind a Chris Paul, behind quite a few other players. But I don't think he's below 15, Steph Curry, in terms of passer. Shooter, he's like 1 or 2. Steph Curry, he's 1 or 2, depending on how you see shooting. Larry Bird's in that category as well, John Stockton, and so Steve Nash. Like, dude, he's number 3 on the all-time assist list. Like, let's just think about that. He's number 3 on the all-time assist list, but he's only 15 on the all-time turnover list. That just shows you how efficient he was. Like, dude, my man had less turnovers than J. Kidd, John Stockton, Isaiah Thomas, LeBron, Magic Johnson. These are all players who get more credit for playmaking than he does. And granted, everybody there on that list, except for John Stockton, has won a championship. But we just saw what happened with that series. We already know what happened with that series. All right? And a lot of players, they get more credit than him for playmaking. And we saw, we seeing the highlights right now, man. Look at this. This is magician work. I don't dick ride nobody, man. I call it as I see it. That dude had the ball on a string when it came to passes. Like, see how Kyrie got the ball on the string when it come to handles? This dude had it with the passes, man. Shit was crazy. So I agree with Don Nelson that Nash had the same tools brought to the table, as Curry, with a similar game. They just had a different mindset. I believe that Steve Nash, if you look at his stats, like I did some calculations, him and Steph Curry have comparable stats, across the board, man. Their assists per game, they look about right in comparison from a pass first to a shoot first point guard. Same with their points per game. Their shooting percentages are almost identical. You could turn them over left, right, switch names, and you would think that the shooting percentages belong to either one of them. Steve Nash is shooting 49% from the field. That's a 1% off from 50-40-90 career. That would be just ridiculous. Steph Curry's at 47.7%, which is still pretty damn impressive. And he's shooting 43% from downtown, like, along with 90% from the free throw line. Shit is crazy, man. But the thing is, with Steph Curry, that a lot of people don't understand, and this isn't to knock him in any way, Steve Nash probably could have done the same thing if he shot as many shots as Steph Curry. Like, I have the stats here up on the screen. You can see that Steve Nash is only attempting about 10 shots a game, 10.6, about 11. Then we look at Steph Curry, he's averaging almost 17 a game, 16.8, so almost 17 a game. So I did some math and I calculated to see what would have happened if Steve Nash shot the same amount of shots as Steph Curry at 16.8. We just looked at the same amount of, similar shooting amounts in terms of their ratios based off of how many threes they shot. Steve Nash would still be shooting the same ratio of threes. It's all based off of ratios and stuff like that. Did the math. This man, Steve Nash, is only averaging 0.4 points less than Steph Curry. So Steve Nash could have went out there and had some 30-point per game seasons with like 10 assists a game. He could have had some ridiculous numbers, But he didn't do all that. Why? Because he's just that's just his mentality. But I think people need to really understand that this dude, we saw that from before, early on in his career. You can't say that if he took more shots that his percentages would go down, because we saw what happened when he shot more shots the last time. His clip stayed the same. So people need to stop throwing disrespect on Steve Nash's name, yo. We saw that he got cheated out of a ring back in 2007. That ring should really be taken from Tim Duncan and given to Steve Nash and the rest of them 2007 boys from the Suns. All right, because we saw some real cheat show shit go down that year. Okay, funny stuff. Funny, man, but hey, it is what it is. Steve Nash, don't disrespect the man. He's a 2-time MVP for a reason. Changed the game of basketball. And just want to say this, man. Dude, in terms of career rank for the whole NBA, Shooting from 25 to 29 feet, he is first in all-time NBA history, 42.1%, in terms of guards from 1996 to the 2013-2014 season. Then we look at shots from the 15 to 19 range. He's second in the NBA all time at 48.4%. Like, dude was a monster shooting the ball. And this isn't just like isolate just his one skill of shooting. He could do everything except play defense very well. But this is just to show you the amount of impact that he had on the game without even fully utilizing his capabilities, right? So I personally have him in my discussion for best players to never win a chip, along with Charles Barkley, Patrick Ewing, Karl Malone, Stockton. But let's just be thankful that we got to see this man play, because honestly, Steve Nash brought us the mold for what players like James Harden and Steph Curry do today. One of the greatest point guards to ever lace him up. Let's stop putting disrespect on his name. Let's put some respect on his name.